idea. The guy that's joining us now is right there with the legends. We have
Thunder from Down Under.
From Down Under. Dave Evans, the original lead singer of AC/DC. Welcome.
Hey, how you doing, guys?
Good.
How you doing?
Oh, I am pumped up about this. This is one of the most iconic bands in the world, and you were there at the beginning. Thanks for joining us. How you doing?
Yeah, my pleasure.
Man, I tell you, Randy has been he's been in a tizzy all day over this, and I guess let's start from the beginning, man. How did this all start for you?
Oh boy, it's going back a few years, but I guess some of it just seems like yesterday, I suppose. I was in a band in Sydney called Velvet Underground, and the Australian Velvet Underground, and I used to talk about a former guitarist that used to be with a band called Malcolm Young, younger brother from the famous George Young from the Easy Beats from the 60s, and so I knew of Malcolm, but we broke up eventually, and I answered an advertisement in the Sydney Morning Herald for a rock singer, into Rolling Stones and Free and Chuck Berry, that kind of thing, and on the other end of the line was Malcolm, and he'd heard of me too, being with Velvet Underground, and he told me that he was jamming with two other guys, the famous Colin Burgess from the Masters Apprentices, which was a big band in the 60s, and a friend, Larry Van Crete. So he said, yeah, come over to Newtown, an inner suburb of Sydney, and have a jam. And so I was pretty excited because I'd heard about Malcolm, and I knew that our music we liked would be virtually the same. We were in the same band, so I rocked over to Newtown and met Malcolm for the first time, and excited to meet Colin Burgess, of course, and good to meet Larry, and we just jammed, just the four of us. And after about 4 or 5 songs, Malcolm really just said to everybody, look, I'm happy, if you're happy, Dave, what about you guys? We all said, yep, everything's great. We shook hands and we formed a band, and we all went out that night and got very drunk and celebrated. But a couple of weeks later, Malcolm asked us if his younger brother, Angus, who was with a band called Kentucky, whether he could audition for us because his band had broken up. And we said, yeah, sure. And Angus come along at a rehearsal and jammed the same music, and everything was fine. And so we all shook hands, and Angus was with the band as well. And that's how it happened in Sydney, Australia, all those years ago.
Hey, Dave, Rotten Rod here. How old were you guys at that time?
Yeah.
Gosh, we were teenagers. I think Colin was a little bit older because he'd been in a big band in the 60s. He might have been about 25 or something like that. But we were teenagers to 25. That was the age bracket. We were pretty young, most of us.
Now, is this something that you'd planned for? I mean, obviously, at this point, being a teenager, we all have these aspirations to be rock gods and these rock and roll dreams. Was this something that did you train for? How did you get into music as a youngster in Australia?
Well, I came from a musical family myself. My father was on stage singing, when I was a kid, different type of music to mine. But he was, we didn't get television in my family until we were 16. And we had music at home. We sang, myself, my sister, the whole family sang. And I used to sing at school, and so all the Stanfords and the concerts and that kind of thing. So it wasn't something that I just decided to do one day to sing. But I had a big fight with my father when I was 16 because I had long hair. Back in those days, it was a big deal. And so I had to leave home, get my hair cut or leave home. So I left home at 16, and it wasn't just me, it was a whole generation of people. Back in those days, in the early 70s, 60s and early 70s, a lot of people did leave home. Haight-Ashbury there on the west coast of the US was full of hippies, as you know. Australia, we had King's Cross in Australia, similar thing, and all over the world. So, and we were young kids, we loved music, and there were a lot of bands around in those days as well because there was no internet, that kind of thing. So a lot of live venues, lots of bands, not many record labels, by the way. So you had to be very good to get a record deal, which would have been a life changer for you if you managed to get a record deal. That was massive, huge. So we were lucky enough to get that record deal pretty quickly after we did our first show, and changed our lives. Apart from Colin, because Colin had already had lots of hit records, Colin Burgess, but for the rest of us, it changed our lives forever.
Who was on drums and bass back there when you first started out back then?
Yeah, it was Colin Burgess. Colin Burgess was the original drummer, and the drummer for the famous Masters Apprentices as well before that.
Who came up with the name AC/DC?
Well, it's funny. we had a show coming up pretty quickly, and we were told in a few weeks, and we had to come up with a name. And so at the rehearsal room, we were all tossing around different names, and we just couldn't agree with each other at the time. And so we decided that at the next rehearsal that we just put 3 names in a hat each, and whoever came out, that's going to be our name. But the next rehearsal, Malcolm and Angus said to us that their sister-in-law, Margaret, had come up with a suggestion, AC/DC, which was like power, and was on the side of all the different appliances at the time, and I thought it was great straight away. I thought free publicity on all the different appliances out there, AC/DC, metal electricity, and Colin liked it pretty much straight away as well, and Larry just said, yeah, cool. So we didn't end up putting those names in a hat. We just all shook hands in the rehearsal room there in Newtown, and we called ourselves AC/DC.
Hey, Dave, when you guys went into the recording studio, I know that Malcolm and Angus's brother did some producing for some of their other stuff. Was he in there producing your stuff, or was that later on?
Yeah, George Young, he was with the Easy Beats from the 60s, very famous.
Yeah.
The Easy Beats also toured America as well. That Friday on My Mind, big hit. And so it was George Young and Harry Vander from the Easy Beats who were the producers of our first records for Albus Records. Very respected, George Young and Harry Vander. And it was great to be able to work with them because Easy Beats were one of my favourite bands when I was going to school. So that was fantastic.
Hey, David, what is that first? Was that first release? Was that an album or an EP, or what was the name of it? And is there?
No, the first was a single. We released Canasta Next to You Girl with Rocking on the Parlour as a B-side, and it was a hit record for us. Canasta Next to You Girl was named as the best Australian group rock record of the year, so it was a great hit for us straight up. And I did record other songs with the band ready for our first album, songs like Soul Stripper, Rock and Roll Singer, Little Lover.
Great songs.
Just about to do Baby Please Don't Go, which was one of our showstoppers, even though it wasn't an original song. But before we could finish the album, I split with the band, and Bob Scott joined, and we recorded a lot of those songs. We had about 5 or 6 songs down for the first album when I split.
Okay, so when you recorded that first cut, and you said it was a B-side, so is there a single, a 45 single somewhere out there floating around with you on it that's a collector's item and worth a lot of money?
Yeah, it's Canasta Next to You Girl, the single, with Rock of the Parlour on the B-side, and it's on the Alberts label for the Australian release, and I think it's Epic label on the New Zealand release, and the Australian one goes on eBay for around about $1,500 usually, and but the other one, the New Zealand one, because there wasn't as many made, up to around about $3,000 on eBay if you're lucky.
How many of those are you setting on, Dave?
Yeah, how many do you have sitting down in the basement?
I haven't got any actually. I did have a copy, but I gave that away for
you don't even
cause.
You don't even have your own personal copy. Yeah.
So I wish I had half a dozen or a dozen copies of that.
No kidding.
So you part with you part with the band and you go on and do your own thing. And did you ever have any regrets?
Well, it's always terrible to leave a situation when you're on top. You know, got a hit record, which is a top 5 in 3 of the different states in Australia. You're pulling the biggest crowds, you're playing at the biggest venues in Australia. It happened through the different personality clashes, and also had a big clash with a manager at the time in Adelaide, and physical confrontation, as it were. We weren't getting paid any money for gigs and stuff like that. We were doing the biggest shows in Australia. So from that point of view, it was very disappointing that happened, because you're riding high. You're one of the top bands in the country. But of course, I went on with other great bands like Rabbit, and there was a Thunder Down Under, and I've had a fantastic career. I'm still recording now. My last CD was released last December, recorded here in the United States. and just toured this year in Canada and Ukraine and here in the United States and Australia. So there's no regrets from that point of view. It's one of those things in circumspect. Bon Scott joined the band after me, and because of that, he was dead in 6 years.
So,
Short years he was dead. So it's like what would happen if Bon hadn't joined the band? Would he still be alive today? It's one of those questions.
did you ever meet Bon, Dave, and get to hang out with him and stuff like that?
Yeah, he got to hang out with us actually. Yeah, I met Bon. He was a fan of the band, and he used to hang out with us in Adelaide. That's where he was living at the time, and he was introduced to us, and he knew the older brother George Judd because when he was with a band called the Valentines in the 60s, the band recorded an Easy Beat song called My Old Man's a Groovy Old Man. And so Bon knew the older brother, because Bon was a lot older than us. He was 29 when he joined the band, which is ancient when you're only 21.
Sure.
21.
Yeah.
But
You guys
he
called
was
him
29
Grandpa.
when he joined. He's a friend of George. It was all good. Everybody got on great. He was a fun guy to have around at the time. And I met him also after he had joined the band a couple of times as well. So, yeah.
I always heard rumors that Bon used to be the chauffeur or like part of the roadie.
That was just a bit of fun. Somebody spread. When we were in Adelaide, he had a car. We didn't have a car. When we were in Adelaide, we were touring, and the car that we did have was actually owned by the bass player. His wife took the car when we were in Adelaide. We just had the truck to get around it, and Bon used to hang around with us, and they'd go up, take the boys to the store, and buy when we went for fish and chips or something like that, like anybody would. So he wasn't a chauffeur, he was just a friend that had a car, like anybody else.
Yep.
So that was just a made up story, yeah.
97.5 The Rock Zone Legend Show. We have the original lead singer of AC/DC, Dave Evans, on the line for you. And we're going to play that song right now, the original, the very first recording. It was written by the Young Brothers, according to the label on the record. Song written by the Young Brothers. AC/DC's first song featuring our guest, Dave Evans, and it's called Can I Sit Next to You, Girl?
97.5 The Drive.